Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? It is Wednesday, October 28th. October 28th? What? Really? Seriously? Okay. It's October 28th, 2020. We're here now. It's a nice day. I don't know. I'm trying to catch up on what happened over the evening hours and into today. Greg Dworkin, of course, has taken that task on. I was just watching his Raft O Stories come across the transom, and of course, Justice Putnam giving me the thumbs up from Netroots Radio remote headquarters, I guess, at least for me anyway. It's pretty remote, but not for the rest of you. Perhaps everything seems to be going well, but he often tips me off as to what some of the larger themes of the day are. And something I missed entirely until this morning, apparently several dozen, let's say, Trump supporters stranded out in the cold at a rally on their way to a rally or something happening in Omaha. I woke up, I got up this morning and turned on the computers and got things ready to find a message among the Rafto stories from Greg referencing the debacle in Omaha. And I said, what debacle have I missed in Omaha? But Twitter trends and his notes and the articles that he sent and Justice's mention of it as well behind the scenes have alerted me to the story. I guess we'll wait for Greg to bring that one around to give you the full details. But we are now fully aware of all internet traditions about discussing hypothermia and bitter cold in Omaha. I don't know. I guess so. Who knows? So, another organizational flop for the Trump campaign. They can ill afford it, but that's fine. I don't mind them doing anything ill, actually. I mean, most of what they do is ill to somebody. And, of course, many millions of people are ill right now thanks to a pandemic that they gosh darn it, they just refuse to see the downside. Apparently, Hogan Gidley, the actual real name of an actual real person, apparently, working at the White House as a spokesperson, apparently had something to say to maybe a CNN correspondent and admonishing them for relentlessly focusing on, or as he said, I should probably find the quote there. He used some oddly phrased method of saying that their focus on coronavirus coverage was just so relentlessly negative, and he just couldn't understand it. I guess we're all supposed to look on the bright side of COVID. So I guess that'll be our task today. It's a tall order, really, honestly. We have news from a study in Europe earlier today, and I think I've neglected to grab that one, but I'll make note for myself to go and find it, that they too are finding short-lived immunity, if any, from COVID-19 once you, as a result of having contracted the disease and having developed natural antibodies to it. Apparently, this finding in comportment, I guess, with the anecdotal note, this is probably the way we ought to be practicing medicine from here on in. Just, does a famous person say this? Yes? Okay, well, then it must be true. I just happen to notice Mia Farrow tweeting something about her daughter having contracted COVID-19 and upon recovery went to donate plasma so that they could use it and extract the antibodies or inject the antibodies into plasma into a recovering COVID patient. And I guess they were glad to have it, and she had produced some good, solid, healthy antibodies. And having gone 6 months later to make another contribution of the same sort, found or was told by her doctors that there just wasn't a usable or a helpful level of antibodies present in her blood at that point, which, bodes ill, once again to use the ill terminology, bodes ill, I guess, for long-term immunity from COVID-19. 6 months, that fits in with some of the other anecdotal findings we found from around the country and around the world in terms of reinfection. And apparently new word from a study from the Imperial College saying, yeah, that's probably about right. And wouldn't you know it, the big surge that happens to be going on throughout Europe and especially in some of the earlier hard-hit countries is happening now, something on the order of 6 or so months after their first big hit. It's also, of course, cold and flu season. So that may have something to do with it. No scientific proof just yet, but if there's only a couple months of immunity to be had, it would stand to reason that those countries which went through a heavy spike 6 months ago might, in fact, there being no herd immunity, find that they are experiencing heavy infections again. We, of course, never shook our initial infection, so it should be twice as bad for our winter cold and flu season. Here's Dr. Greg Dworkin to tell you why that may or may not be true, plus also whether or not people are going to dump their president over it. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. So we don't know.
Right. So goodbye, everyone.
You know, I'm just enjoying. Somebody sent me a lawn sign today, which is a Biden-Harris 2020 sign, and it says, "Alexa, get me a new president."
All right. Yeah. Good. Does it work?
I don't know. Alexa. We'll find out in a week. Yeah. You know, the place I'm most worried about, two places really, El Paso in Texas and Wisconsin, really are tremendously spiking. And I'm just worried the deaths are about to go up in Wisconsin. I mean, it's really bad. And in terms of antibodies, we just don't know. Tony Fauci has even said that maybe what the vaccine will do is decrease symptoms, but not necessarily infection. And we simply don't know how this is going to play out, but it's not going to be good. And I really worry about the Midwest infections right now, which you can really trace back to Sturgis and other movement between the states. But it's impacting in a big way in terms of the election. In fact, the ABC Washington Post polls are out today. And you have to put these in perspective.
Why don't we do that then?
Okay. Well, ABC Washington Post says Biden leads Trump narrowly in Michigan and significantly in Wisconsin.
Oh.
Now, why is a 51-44% narrow?
I don't know.
Because Wisconsin is 57-40.
Oh. Okay.
Right? And the reason they call it narrow is because if you look at the actual graph of the error margins, which are in the story that the Washington Post has about these polls, then you see what's going on is that the highest possible Trump number just barely hits the lowest possible Biden number.
Aha.
They just barely overlap.
That I like.
And so that's what they call narrow.
Yeah, all right.
Which is, which is newspeak for, it's a pretty big lead, but it's just at the limits of the margin of error. And therefore, we can't exactly say this is a significant lead. In fact, I'll give you that graphic so you could see it for yourself. But if you look at the Wisconsin one, it's just way beyond. Now, that doesn't mean that it's 17 points. And in fact, the MU Law poll is coming out later today, and we'll get a better read of Wisconsin and see where we're at there. But Wisconsin is one of those places that the virus is hitting hard, and there's no question that that's influencing how people are feeling about the president right now in Wisconsin.
Well, good.
Now, Michigan, interestingly enough,
Michigan
doesn't have as big a coronavirus presence because they have a governor who's really clamped down to the point where people are threatening to kidnap her.
Yes.
But it's had the effect of keeping the virus under control, so people aren't as pissed about it in Michigan as they are in Wisconsin, where the state legislature and the Republican court have combined to try to reduce the Democratic governor's ability to do anything about the virus. So it's a really interesting situation. NPR was interviewing some Wisconsin dairy farmers in heavily Republican areas, and it's just fascinating to listen to them. Well, how do you feel about the virus? Well, it's not really affecting me or my family, so like I really don't care.
Okay.
Well, what does affect you? Well, the price of milk. Well, how's that going? Yeah. Well, with the subsidies we're getting from Trump, we're doing great. So, I'm voting for him.
Okay.
Well, what about everybody else? Well, I don't care about everybody else. Why should I care about everybody else?
True.
Look, the guy's a businessman, and I'm a businessman, and I'm a Republican, and he's a Republican. And that's all you really need to know.
I guess so.
Do you think that maybe it's possible that Trump hasn't handled the virus particularly well? Well, I think he's handled it about as well as you can, and none of my people have it.
How about the cows?
Like Wisconsin's falling apart, but I don't care.
Yeah, on my
You're in my
farm,
little bubble. I'm fine.
I guess.
So although you may find that frustrating, that's how regular people vote.
Yeah.
Who don't pay that much attention to politics.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's just a question of how long will there be people
How does he get his
milk?
40%? Aren't they all racist? No, really. They just want to be left alone, and as long as they're making money, they think everything's okay. Why are you making money? Because the economy's falling apart, but I'm getting a subsidy, so it looks okay to me.
Yeah.
Well, what about you? I don't care about you.
Right. I don't like milk anymore.
I'm a Republican.
Okay, that's the way they work. That's definitely true. I mean, eventually, of course, it'll be interesting to come back to them. What we need is a New York Times reporter to interview them in the diner when they do have COVID.
Right. Well, the other side of the coin, though. Oh, yeah, now all of a sudden it's important.
Yes.
But the other side of the coin is that's not the majority. If it were, then Trump wouldn't be down by 17 points in this poll here. So, again, one has to put that in perspective. And then, we have a dearth of national polling, although that's about to change. We're going to have a polar coaster in the next day or two as we get closer to the election. And all of the people who are saving money and only want to poll once are going to put their, here's where we're at markers. So that's going to change. But for now, just about the only national poll of note besides the USC Dornsife poll that doesn't change, it's still double-digit lead for Biden, and the IBD tip tracker, which goes up and down between 5 and 7 points for Biden. The only poll of note that's come out is a CNBC poll, which uses the same polling firms, Republican and Democratic firms together, that the NBC Wall Street Journal poll uses. And that came out yesterday, and it was an 11-point lead for Biden. So if you're looking for tightening, you have to look in the funny places. You have to take a look at the national graph, and then you have to squint, and then you have to pick an arbitrary point and say, oh, look, it's tightened since then.
Aha.
Whatever your arbitrary point is. Because if you look at the poll as a whole, really, they haven't changed in a long time. And as a matter of fact, the lead story I have in the Pundit Roundup today is from Stu Rothenberg, who says, with all the chaos, the shape of the Trump-Biden race is unchanged. The president did not expand his appeal during his term. With 1 week until Election Day, you don't need another column from me on swing voters in key states and analysis of Trump's style and how that's affected the race. And you don't need more of my thoughts on the suburbs or partisan polarization or which Senate races will be crucial. Sometimes enough is enough. I already told you what I think about all those things and how I got here. The shape of the presidential contest has not changed fundamentally since early 2019 when I started handicapping the race. The president had plenty of opportunities to change things. He simply chose not to. Or maybe, as in the case with COVID-19, he wasn't up to the task. So Trump is losing. That's what Stu was saying. He said that a long time ago. So did I. Remember, Trump was never the favorite. He was trailing slightly to Biden even before COVID hit, and nothing about COVID has strengthened his hand in that regard to winning re-election because clearly he doesn't deserve it, and he's going to lose the election. Now, do we know that for certain? Of course not. To be sure, a lot can change. You could still pivot.
Yes, right, true. This is, I know.
I have to wait and see what Dana Bash says about that. Or the way Dave Wasserman puts it, I'd like to sound the alarm on Joe Biden. He's likely to win next week's pretional election. That's the tweet.
Okay. Got it.
So, we have to, again, there was some funny but true story making the local rounds here that I saw in my local media. Mm-hmm. A reporter was interviewing people in those long voting lines and asked one of them, how long have you been waiting to vote? And they said, 4 years.
Yeah, not in line necessarily, but okay.
But, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what's happening here. The early vote is massive. It's impressive. Half the country's already voted, and more so will vote by the end of this week. And then next week is the actual election day. And so a lot of these votes are banked. That's what happens in places like Nevada and North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we see what's going on in terms of the lead that the Democrats are clearly building and whether that's enough, because nobody knows. And so there will be uncertainty. But it may well be that the usual traditional number of people who vote on Election Day is simply less than usual, which means that the red wave that typically happens on Election Day may also be less than usual. All right. And that's how you have to read things like what's going on in Florida. You know, the Democrats built a lead in the and the same thing in Nevada. The Democrats built a lead in early voting by mail. Mm-hmm. Republicans are starting to cut into that by same-day early voting. The last 3 days are typically when the young people get off their butt and start voting, but they've already started to do that, and we'll have some stats on that. The Democrats are bringing in low-propensity voters. The Republicans are getting their regular voters. And how much of that is going to cannibalize what happens on Election Day, we don't know. In Florida, you look at everything and say, okay, well, it's going to be a close race. It's always a close race. It's Florida.
Yeah,
you knew that before you even started to count.
Right.
And in Nevada, you can look at the stats and try to predict whether or not you've got enough of a firewall to withstand whatever happens on Election Day. And we'll know that in the next day or two, because the last 3 days in Nevada is always when the Democrats peak. And we have to see if that's going to happen this year. So you step back and look at all of that. And you also look and see where the strategy is for the different candidates.
Where is
Joe Biden is in Georgia, and Donald Trump is pulling his money out of Florida and Ohio and Texas and concentrating on trying to win back Michigan and Wisconsin, which he won't.
Okay.
He just won't. Those states are gone. He's lost them.
Good.
And then Ohio, which he certainly can win. He's probably up by half a point there. And Pennsylvania. John Hallman noted on Morning Joe this morning, private polls are showing about an 8-point lead. The quality polls are showing about a 7-point lead that are public. A couple of 4s, a couple of 5s. Uh-huh. Some really lousy partisan polls that are just made up on the Republican side, showing a tie or, slight lead for the Republicans in Pennsylvania. But you have to appreciate the fact that those polls are, how do I politely say this? Garbage.
Okay. That's polite enough. I mean,
right. And am I just dismissing partisan polls because I'm a partisan? No, I mean, some of them are actually garbage.
So you are dismissing partisan polls.
The good polls. Ipsos has Biden up by 7. Civics has Biden up by 7 in Pennsylvania. Right. Gravis, which is a Republican poll, but a decent one, has Biden up by 7. Muhlenberg College, A-plus poll on 538, has Biden up by 7.
Okay.
All right. Those are all pretty good.
Well, all right.
We have Trafalgar. Remember, with Trafalgar, they have a secret sauce that adds shy Trump voters for no good reason. And if you look at them, they've got Biden up by 1. If you do the usual rule of adding 5 to Trafalgar, that would make it a 6. And that's about where everybody else is.
Okay.
So, for that doesn't mean that Pennsylvania's safe. It's not the 17-point lead that Wisconsin is supposedly at in the ABC Washington Post poll. It lags behind Michigan and Wisconsin for certain in terms of where it's at. But it's just a reminder that if Biden wins those 3 states, he wins. He's the president. And, he's already got 2 out of 3, and he's leading in Pennsylvania. But he's also leading in Arizona, slightly leading in North Carolina, even in Georgia, where he just was. Texas is in play. Florida is Florida. And Ohio is also in play, oddly enough. So these are all states that, Trump should have put away and hasn't. And for that reason, Biden's just in an excellent position to try to expand the map, which is what he's doing, while Trump is trying to fight to play defense in only the Midwestern battleground. That's it. That's the only place that he's actually going to be. And it's for that reason, with close races, when you fiddle with the map, that he's in places like Nebraska. Because, in certain scenarios, it comes down to a 269 split, and he needs that one vote in Nebraska for Nebraska 2, and that's why he was in Omaha, and that led to the debacle of his big campaign rally in freezing weather, just that freezing weather, having a situation where at the airport the buses brought people and dropped them off, but then couldn't pick them up, so they were stuck in freezing weather conditions, and many of them had to wind up in the many, 6, 7, 8, actually had to wind up in the hospital.
Well, that's okay. It's a pre-existing condition, and he's going to help you with that.
Being a Trump supporter is definitely a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, and you're going to get $200 off your prescriptions as soon as those cards arrive.
And of course, like 100 pundits said, oh, well, Trump leaving supporters out in the cold is a perfect metaphor for his presidency.
Yes.
But that's how it came to be that he was in Omaha asking people to come out and see him. And that's how it came to be that he left a lot of his supporters out in the cold.
Yes. Well, literally speaking here. So what happened to the buses? Did it snow on them? What happened?
It was cold, and the airport roads were crowded, and they just couldn't get back to the hangar in time.
Okay.
Right. Other notable polls besides the ABC Washington Post poll this morning and the CNBC Biden 51, Trump 40 from yesterday, which is a national poll, we have Colby College this morning weighing in on Maine.
It's cold. Yes.
Yeah. Well. It's pretty significant what they have. Let's just see if we can pull those up here.
Cheese. They have Colby cheese.
Yeah. We have Colby College, Maine 1.
Okay.
Biden 56, Trump 34. That's the Bill in Portland, Maine part 34. Of Maine.
Yeah. All right.
And then Maine 2, the upper part of Maine, which is more rural. They have Biden 46, Trump 42. It's a 4-point lead in Maine 2.
Where are the blueberries?
All over, but certainly Maine 2.
Okay, just checking.
Lobster's Maine 2 also.
All right.
But there's a lot in Maine 1. I mean, you get that all over the state. But it's significant because that really should be Trump territory, and it's not. And the lobstermen are still,
They're blueberries,
Trump.
Greg.
Okay. And then in that same Colby College poll, they've also done the U.S. Senate, and it turns out Sarah Gideon is 47, and Collins is 43.
Okay.
And the other two people running, Savage is at 5 and Lynn is at 2. Why is that important? Because Maine does ranked choice voting. And it's highly unlikely that the Savage and Lynn people, for their second choice, would pick Collins, who is stuck at 43.
Okay.
Point being?
Why make her second choice?
Collins is in deep, deep, deep trouble.
Yeah, well, she's deeply troubled.
Right?
This has always been the case.
October 15th, the previous poll of Maine was done by Pan Atlantic Research, Gideon 47, Collins 40. That's a 7-point lead. This is a 3-point lead or a 4-point lead. But again, with ranked choice voting, it's actually more than that. So Republicans are now talking about the fact that they sort of kind of expect to lose the Senate.
Okay. Well, I would hope so.
Oh, by the way, Gary Peters is up 6 points in that that Michigan poll we were talking about from ABC Washington Post.
Okay.
So when you put all of the polling together today from the little that we have, and there's going to be a ton more. There's going to be Monmouth. They're going to look at Georgia and Florida. There's going to be MU Law poll today, who's the gold standard in Wisconsin. They're not going to find a 17-point lead. That'll be more realistic. But if it's 6 or 7, that'll tell us what we need to know. Even a 5-point lead, that's a steady 5-point lead, means Biden is ahead in Wisconsin. And no, nobody's going to feel comfortable until the election is over. But at the same time, no, it's not 2016. Now, it is not. More on that. Okay, one of my friends, Brandon on Twitter, has put together a rather remarkable set of polls, which are public polls that he's gotten a hold of, and he's put together a spreadsheet of district polling in the various and sundry states. Okay?
Yes.
So remember, when you're looking at district level.
Apparently this is district level. Yes.
Yeah. You see a lot of information that you don't necessarily get from the National Post. Let me give you an idea, and let me give you the link first so that you can follow along. And later, when you do the summary, you'll be able to follow along at home.
Excellent.
But here is the spreadsheet. And let's just look at Pennsylvania. These are average polls that we have. And right now, if you're looking at the split between Trump and Biden in selected Pennsylvania districts.
Yes.
Okay. Pennsylvania won.
Okay.
Biden's up by 11. Okay. At the same point in 2016, Clinton was up by 2. To give you an idea where we're going here. So that's a +9 for Biden compared to 2016.
All right.
All right. Pennsylvania 7. Biden's up 13, whereas Clinton was up by 1.
Okay.
Right. Pennsylvania 8. Biden's up by 2. Clinton was down by 10.
Well.
Pennsylvania 10. Biden's up by 4. Clinton was down by 9. Pennsylvania 16. Yes. Biden's down by 4. Clinton was down by 20.
Okay.
So the point is that Biden's running 10 points ahead in these Pennsylvania districts compared to Trump. That's why when you hear that there's a private poll showing Biden up by 8 in Trump in Pennsylvania, it rings true because it matches what you're seeing in the districts.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's really amazing breakdown. And
yeah, it's amazing work that Brandon did, so he should get credit for it. But, this is real, folks. This is not 2016.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Edwards Radio. Yeah, I don't know, I want to jump right back to that if you like.
Right. Well, anyway, I was looking at some of the other districts, and they're all telling you a similar tale. And some of the districts are looking pretty good for Biden in Texas, which is why it's so competitive. There's other polling out today as well. We have Christopher Newport University.
Hello. I know you people.
Which is looking at Virginia. Biden leads Trump 53-41.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I'm going to see if I can track down Virginia 2. Yes. That's in that poll?
It's in the spreadsheet.
It's in the spreadsheet.
A Christopher Newport University poll, which I don't know whether it's the Wasson Center or what, but it says here Christopher Newport U.
Yeah. And the key issues, Virginia voters indicate the COVID-19 pandemic is the most important issue for the next president to address, 29%, followed by the economy, 21%, and healthcare, 13%. And if you add healthcare plus COVID together, it's a whopping 42%.
Nice. It's the virus.
And, it's the virus, and that is driving the election. I think that's the main thing that comes out of this.
All right.
Mark Warner is doing fine against his opponent by 20 points.
I don't even hear from that guy.
Yeah. So I think it's all good. I mean, it's all a particularly good result for the Democrats. But I think, again, the important thing is that it highlights the important parts of why COVID is such an important driver of what's happening in the election.
Yes. So I note here, speaking of good, the other Virginia districts in your spreadsheet, one being Virginia 5, where the race is close, but not...
is that not, Cameron Webb, Virginia
yes,
5?
And not leaning in favor of Webb at the moment, but close. And as you were pointing out, the swing is the thing here. Still polling leaning Republican by 2.5 points, but...
that's a very Republican district.
Yeah, a swing of 8.5 points from, I guess, if I'm reading the columns correctly, still Clinton's performance there then would be here. And this column went Republican by 11 points, now down to 2.5. So even where they're losing, they're doing considerably better. And, of course, that'll add to the statewide totals for the top of the ticket in my own district. Yeah, mine, Virginia 10. I live here, so it's all set. We're D plus 21 at the moment. So people are listening to me and voting the way I do. Not because they know I'm here. It's just nice people want to live near me. Who's running? It's Jennifer Wexton.
Okay, so you're a Wexton. Okay, what are the districts in Virginia you got?
That's all I have on the spreadsheet. Although there's another entry here. I don't know whether it's a second poll in Virginia 10 or he just forgot to put the district in or what. But I think most of the other places where they've had multiple polls, they average them. There's an unlabeled Virginia district, which could be 11 maybe because it comes next and there aren't that many more. That's a D plus 9. That would probably comport with what you'd find in the 11th district, which I think is Jerry Connolly. So Northern Virginia suburbs of D.C. So, all right. Well, it's not labeled, and the rest of the data isn't there, so I don't know what to tell
so
you.
What we do have is on October 21st,
okay.
which was last week, Christopher Newport did Virginia 2, and that's where they found Elaine Luria beating Scott Taylor by 7.
Okay.
And public policy polling has done Virginia 5 and found Webb, Cameron Webb, the Democrat, who's a doctor, by the way, over Good, who is the person running for the Republicans to replace Don Riggleman.
He's not good.
Who was to the right of Good, not very good at all. So they had Webb 46, Good 43. So it's we got 2 polls out of Virginia, and the Virginia 5 is very close and could go either way. And you know what happens in a wave. Sometimes everything breaks together.
Yeah,
so that's really where the polling is at. Let's look at the more generic part of polling. Okay, and this is from Circle, which is Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement. And they've got a piece here on absentee and early votes cast and requested by young people in key states, 2020 versus 2016,
like
the youth vote.
8 years old. Right.
Okay. Texas, in 2020, early votes cast by youth, 753,600.
Go youth.
That's 7.5 times what it was in 2016.
Oh, that I couldn't tell. All right, well, good. That's a larger number. I like that.
Right? 4 times in Florida, 433,000 compared to 134,000. That's why the numbers themselves don't tell you everything. You can add up who are the Democrats and who are the Republicans. In Florida, for example, you don't know who the Republicans are voting for. Are they golf carts for Biden or not? And if a lot of the younger voters come in as no party affiliate, then that group might be leaning Democrat, but you can't tell that from the registration. So that's why Florida is going to go to the wire and nobody's going to know until it happens. But looking at these numbers, this is very encouraging. You've got 7.5 times the amount of early vote cast by youth in Texas compared to 2016 in raw numbers, and Florida 4 times the amount, North Carolina 3 times the amount, 3 times the amount in Georgia. Virginia is almost 10 times the amount.
Wow. Well, for all the people who wondered, hey,
Michigan 10
how come
times
they
the
never
amount.
show up?
Ohio, is 5 times the amount. There's just a lot of youth voting going out, an infinite amount in Pennsylvania, according to this.
This is a measure of the early. How many of them have taken advantage of early
The youngs
voting?
are showing up.
Yes. Well, they like to be able to show up on a more flexible schedule, which doesn't surprise anybody.
Yes, and a lot of them will
knows
vote late. So that's what we're going to see in Nevada in the next 2 or 3 days, and that's what we're looking for there. In the Simon Rosenberg has a thread about this from yesterday, Daily Youth Vote. 13.1 million Gen Z and millennials have turned out so far in 2020, and in 2016, at this point, it was 5.3.
Okay, yes.
The Gen Z millennial share of the early vote has gone from 17.7% at this point to 21.6% today, 22% increase. Shoot. Those votes matter. Remember, it was a close election last time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm still struck by the way that came out in quick cadence. Gen Z and what are Gen Z and millennials? Oh, Gen Z and
Generation millennials, okay. Millennials and Gen Z. Okay, yes, and of course we have that famous clip. How do you do, fellow kids? Don't sleep on Zoomers and millennials this election. The assumption that young people don't vote is being turned on its head from Politico. We have one from U.S. News. Good read on Youth Vote from Susan Milligan. Biden bolsters lead over Trump among young voters. This is CNN. Dana Bash looking at the Youth Vote. Appreciate how young vote in the piece. We're honest about the peer pressure they feel to vote, which is great.
Good, yes.
Okay, and then the Harvard IOP poll. The 40th edition of the Harvard Youth Poll finds that 2020 youth voting is on track for record turnout. Former Vice President Biden gained significant support among young Hispanic voters in that poll. So you put it all together, all the signs are good. They're there. I mean, somebody actually, here it is, Wednesday, before the election, with all of these record turnouts. And somebody tweeted me this morning, you have to watch against complacency. I didn't strangle them.
Well, you have to. But we already have, so it's all right.
Half the country's already voted. Look at these numbers. They are skyrocketing. People are waiting 4 years to vote in line. You know,
yes.
I mean, there is no complacency.
You see, they're in line.
There isn't any.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you have to be. You can't be complacent about the lack of complacency because then it might just sneak right back in.
Well,
guess
not going to happen.
I don't
People
know.
are amped up. And
there's
really
very little
vote.
time
and
to
of course they're
complacent.
going to, and you can't stop this. They're going to gnaw their fingers down to their elbows until we get the election results. That is inevitable. It's going to happen.
And it could take a while. So
you need a plan for that, right? You got to play golf. I play video games. You got to distract yourself somehow. You know, but you know, the intensity for voting is there. It's just there. Okay, here's Tom Bonner looking at the other end.
Where? I don't see it. All right.
Texas 2020 general election early and absentee vote report. It is now safe to say more black voters over the age of 65 have voted in Texas already than have ever voted in any election in that state. That's one heck of a benchmark.
Huh. Well, there's more of them, maybe. I don't know. But they vote. That's the important thing.
They're voting.
More black voters over 65 in Texas than
have voted now,
okay,
even before the election, than have ever voted before.
Yeah, all right, and then we'll have an election day, and I presume more.
You know why?
Why we'll have
because they're not complacent.
Well, they can't afford to be complacent.
None of us
literally.
Can.
They just
None
don't
of us
have any
are.
money.
In Texas, the total early turnout of white college-educated voters is at 94% of the final 2016 turnout already. White non-college voters are at 67%. That's how you know they're Biden voters. And as I've noted before, more Asian voters in Texas have already cast a ballot early than voted in total in the 2016 general election.
People like the early stuff.
As have black seniors. Again, these are going to be voters who are not necessarily going to be Trump-friendly. That's what's making Texas competitive. It's not a guarantee we're winning.
Right.
But that is what's making Texas competitive.
Yes.
Okay? And so Tom goes on to say, the idea you can't learn anything from the early vote is silly.
Okay.
Can you predict who's going to win? No. But we have answered two very important broad questions already by assessing the early vote. Will turnout be high? Yes.
Okay.
We've sailed past 2016 early vote totals with a week remaining. A big part of this is due to the pandemic. But the fact that 1 in 4 of these early voters didn't vote in 2016 points toward very high overall turnout.
Yes.
Number 2, are Democrats energized? Yes.
Good.
In some states, core Democratic constituencies have already surpassed their total turnout in the 2016 election. We not only know Democrats are showing up in the early vote, we can assess relative intensity among the subgroups. In the end, the assessment of the early vote leaves us with two very important unanswered questions. Will Republicans match it Will they match the intensity? And how much crossover voting is going to take place? And we're going to have to wait until next Tuesday to find that out. But
yes.
we'll have a rough sense by next Tuesday of just how deep of a hole Trump will have to dig himself out of on Election Day, and we'll be able to piece that in context with the remaining non-voting electorate. So you can not only look at people who have voted, you can also turn around and say, okay, well, how many votes are left on the table, and who are they? And so you have a better idea of what you're going to be watching for in terms of turnout. If you find that all of the votes on the table are seniors in Florida who haven't voted yet, this is theoretic because they're actually voting early, but let's pretend, in this pretend scenario, you find out that the votes on the table are seniors, then you're going to look at Sumner County and the villages to find out how they're voting on Election Day, and that'll tell you what's going on. That's how you can use what you already know of who voted and look to see who's left and what's going to happen there. But the fact of the matter is that Democrats are amped up. They're excited about voting. They are voting. And all this complacency nonsense is just that. It's nonsense.
Okay.
People want to vote. There is no complacency. Everybody is biting their knuckles about the results, and nobody's sitting back and say, okay, we got this. You can bring that up if you want to. It's dumb because that's not what's happening. But, hey, if that's what you need to do to motivate yourself, that's great. Okay. Everybody else,
we'll allow it.
They're out there voting.
Yes.
They're worried about the outcome, or they like to be with a winner or whatever it is. And so, no, nobody's voting like they're 20 points down. They're voting like we can't afford to lose. We think we're winning, but we have to make sure we're winning, and that's why we're turning out.
Yes. Well, a lot of people are just voting like, I don't care what anybody else is doing. I'm going.
Yeah.
So there's just that.
I just care about my Wisconsin dairy farm.
Right, true. Yeah, I guess it's a similar phenomenon, except they're going to vote correctly, so that's good. The record numbers of people talking about complacency, though, this year. Even though there's record lows of complacency.
Yeah, well,
so that's good.
We're all still waiting for the Comey letter.
Well, I'm still waiting for the Whitey tape, so,
Yeah, well, tomorrow, the 29th, is Comey Day if you go by the calendar.
Is that right? Oh,
but if you're going by days before the election, it's already passed.
I see. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
So it depends upon how you want to look at it. In either case, Biden's lead now is way bigger than Clinton's was at this time.
Okay.
Clinton was leading by 2 at this point after the Comey letter, and Biden's got a 9-point lead at least, if not 11.
Comey's letter now would not make any difference.
Well, it would get Comey a lot of
people would say, why are you writing a
invective.
letter? You're not the director of the FBI.
Right. It wasn't appropriate when you did it then. Why are you doing it now?
Right. Especially now. You're not even there. But I feel a feeling he would write a different letter at this point. I would welcome a letter talking about what a disaster Trump is, I guess, but it wouldn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. But I'd take it, and I'd read it aloud, if you're willing.
Right. Oh, let me just finish up with this individual district polling that Brandon Allen put together because we were talking about it.
We have it. Let's talk.
So Virginia 10.
Yes.
Okay, right now in Virginia 10, with the one poll we have, Biden is beating Trump in your district by 21 points, 58-37.
Yes.
By 21 points. But 4 years ago,
yeah,
Clinton only won that district by 10.
That's right.
So that's an 11-point improvement in your district for the Democrat.
We made more Democrats since then. I have made at least one that is voting.
In Virginia 5, which you mentioned,
yeah,
that was an R plus 2.5 district in the latest polling. But 4 years ago, it was an R plus 11 district. So that's a 9-point gain for the Democrats in Virginia 5, which is why Cameron has a chance. Hi, Abby.
Right. Abby's voting there.
And in Virginia 2, which is our other favorite Virginia district to watch, Christopher Newport again had Elaine Luria up in that one, but also has Biden up in that district by 9.
Hey,
that's a district that Trump won in 2016 by 3. So that's a 12.4 swing in the Democrats' direction. So any way you look at it, Biden's doing fine and doing much better at the district level than he was in 2016. So you got the national polls that say he's doing much better. You have the district level polls. Then you have the uneven battleground polls. And I say uneven because the same pollster doing the same state, kind of few and far between. The quality polls in the states are few and far between. And so, yes, everybody understands the battleground polls are more important, but it's a lot harder to make something of the information you get from those battleground polls. And that's why putting the district polls together with the battleground polls and with the national polls, you get a much, much better feel for what's going on. Other battlegrounds that were important yesterday, we talked about today's poll, but in addition to the Maine, Michigan, and Wisconsin polls we get today, and the Virginia poll we were just going over from Christopher Newport, yesterday we got North Carolina public policy polling, Biden +4. Okay. Ipsos had North Carolina at Biden +1. RMG Research had North Carolina at Biden +1. So he's maintaining that 1 to 3 point lead. Remember, we talked about North Carolina being inelastic, kind of doesn't move all that much. Minnesota, for those who were still concerned about it, Gravis, a Republican pollster, had Biden up 14. To give you an idea. Survey USA had North Carolina even, so there was a lot of North Carolina polling yesterday. And in Nevada, Siena College New York Times from yesterday had Biden +6. John Ralston thought that was a pretty reasonable poll. And the thing that was of interest in that Nevada poll is that the undecided, not the undecideds, but the others, NPA, no party affiliate in Florida, is other in Nevada. And in Nevada, they were breaking for Biden. So that's really important. If that's true,
it's true.
He's got a lock on the state. We don't know if it's true.
Oh, all right. Well,
right?
let's
Civics,
just say it's
Georgia, true. Biden +5. Pennsylvania, Civics, Biden +7. Mm-hmm. Michigan, okay. Ipsos, Biden +10.
Yeah.
Florida Atlantic University, Biden +2. Now, this is a good one. Trump was +5 in Florida, according to Susquehanna polling. That's what I mean about garbage polling. How do I know it's garbage polling?
What are they doing in Florida?
Just about the fact that it's only the red on the board. When you go back and look at their methods, their likely voter screen excludes anybody who didn't vote in 2016 and 2012.
Okay.
Or 2018.
Well, that's not likely to happen.
Right? I mean, you have to have a regular vote. Basically, they're only looking at seniors.
I guess.
As far as I could tell.
And
it's just a weird poll. And that's one of the
traffic.
reasons why you have to dismiss it. Michigan, Glengarriff Group, Biden +8. Arizona, Ohio Predictive Insights, Biden +3. Iowa, Raba Research, Biden +4. Arizona, Patankin, this is Mandy Patinkin's place. I don't know. Patankin Research Strategies, Biden +7. Okay, University of Nevada, Las Vegas Lee Business School, Biden +9 in Nevada. I mean, these are all just really fairly strong, or at least consistently slight leads, even when they're slight, for Biden in those states. So again, you're going to be biting your fingers to the elbow until the election's done. But there's nothing at the district level that's making you nervous. The state levels are making you a little bit nervous. The national polls are looking great.
Yes.
So that's the state of the art based on what we know from the polls.
That's okay. I understand we're dropped a note here from Mad Hatter who says he sends us G. Elliott Morris's tweet on I guess one more final YouGov Economist poll. And speaking of national polling,
what's it got?
Biden 54, Trump 43.
11.
Yeah, others 2. Not sure 2. It's a different category from other. Other could be. Well, all right. So pretty good, 54-43. Just wanted to sort of get that one on the record. And by the way, back to the district polling, also in Virginia 5, as we discussed the congressional candidates. Virginia 5 is where Charlottesville is. So Charlottesville actually a blue stronghold usually, but the surrounding suburbs and exurbs very Republican. But that's where we saw the swing from R plus 11 down to R plus 2.5. So the site, the epicenter, the locus of Trump's, probably the start of his march of downward slide, even among Republicans, this reaction to Charlottesville. People are aware of it in the Charlottesville area, and I guess a significant portion of them, even though often voting Republican, have probably not forgiven him.
Right. And let me just throw in at the end one observation just made by Harry Enton, and that is that Arizona is a massive complication in Trump's re-election bid. Okay, so even if you're sweating Pennsylvania, despite everything I told you, even if you're sweating Pennsylvania,
all right,
if Biden carries Arizona and he's ahead, and there is no history of the polls in Arizona underestimating the GOP, if he carries Arizona, it likely means Trump needs to win 2 of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, not just 1.
Okay.
And he's not winning Michigan, and he's not winning Wisconsin. People are really upset about coronavirus. I won't say they're panicking, but they're really upset about coronavirus in Wisconsin.
No, he's
it's driving these numbers.
Yeah, and so it's interesting.
It's driving the election, but you could see it as a microcosm in what's happening in Wisconsin right now.
He's prevented
the only way that you don't have coronavirus drive your vote is if you pretend it doesn't affect you, like that Wisconsin farmer. That's why I wanted to highlight that.
Okay, right. And if you're any other kind of farmer who isn't getting,
if you're any other human who's worried about what's happening on the farm next door to you, then it's bothering you.
Yeah. Well, there's still a couple of days for coronavirus to bother him, unless he's voted already. Maybe he.
That's the thing. The death rate is going to spike before the election. So
it's right, as we say, lagging indicator, etc. But it's time for the lag to come due. Wisconsin has been at the top of the infection charts for some time now, and that lagging indicator may start to catch up right around the time that people head out to the polls. It doesn't affect me, but there are dead people in the road on my way to the polls.
Right. Anyway, that's it for my summary for today. That's what's going on.
Okay.
I wonder how that hypothermia event that Trump had in Nebraska is really going to play on national media. We'll have to see. But for now, that's where we're at. Take care.
Okay.
And it's Wednesday. That means we'll be back tomorrow. We'll have a whole bunch of polling to talk about tomorrow, too.
Well, rats. Well, maybe we can pass on the information. We're not going to be able to be on the air tomorrow, as I will be under anesthesia tomorrow. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, that by itself wouldn't prevent me from actually broadcasting, but I can't bring the microphone into a sterile area.
Oh, okay. Well,
So...
there's that, so we won't be live, but we'll be back on Monday.
Yes.
You'll be back on Friday.
I'll be around.
I won't ask the very rude anesthesia. How can we tell? I think that there'll be plenty to talk about on Friday when you're on, and then of course on Monday we're going to have our big pre-election roundup of where everything stands.
We'll definitely do that. The rest of it is. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe anesthesia won't affect. It doesn't affect me. I'm not under it now, so who cares?
Right.
I guess I'm the Wisconsin dairy farmer / surgeon. Okay.
You look at your tractor and the gas gauge is on E, and the E stands for who cares? It's everybody else, not me.
I guess so. Just so long as I can. I don't know. The cows have no complaints. So.
Yeah, that's an unusual reaction. Most people in rural areas actually are incredibly tuned into what's going on with their neighbors, and they do things in a cooperative way, Grange-style stuff. It was just such an odd report. It stuck with me. Take care, and I will talk to you on Friday, and good luck tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Greg, and we'll let you know how everything goes. Okay, thanks again, and well done, Abby, for keeping everything low-key and quiet this morning. I wonder where the garbage truck is. Maybe she headed out early to meet it and just simply she didn't want to panic when the garbage truck came, just like President Trump encouraged her not to. So she's a solid citizen and a good radio partner at that. All right. Well, I think my guess about what's going to happen with the show over the next 2 days is this. Tomorrow, a relatively minor surgical procedure, but that does require general anesthesia and will require, who knows? I may be out and recovered by the time the show is supposed to go on the air, but I think it's a bad bet to gamble and to say, yes, we'll do the show. Now, I can say this ahead of time already. I have, in fact, completed a pre-recorded show for tomorrow, so it's not that you will be left without new material tomorrow. There's a big question mark about what happens on Friday. as we warned those of you who tune in for the Friday Ian Reifowitz appearances last Friday, that this could be happening. My guess is that a Friday morning show, it's possible, but it might be a very uncomfortable prospect. And so my plan is to forego the live Friday broadcast, but there's no material yet prepared for Friday. That might be something we're able to put together today. Might unfortunately have to resort to a rerun, or I might feel so great and so chipper following my surgical procedure that I just can't wait to get on the air on Friday, but I would tend to doubt it. So it's ill-timed, of course, because the election is coming up and these are such crucial days. But look, you can and should spend the day on GOTV operations anyway, and calling and texting where you can to voters who haven't yet shown up at the polls in the last couple of days. And to the extent that my little show would take you away from anything like that, well, we wouldn't want that to happen. So no anesthetized shows that I have planned here. But anyway, just straightening out the housekeeping items for the next couple of days. All right. Well, that leaves us with virtually no time to discuss anything before our second break, but it's good timing for the second break. We need to reset, dive into Pocket, look through the Twitter scroll, and figure out what's most pressing for what could very well be the last live hour of programming for this week. And, well, I can assure you that there are still things languishing in Pocket that weren't used for tomorrow's show that we can get to. I want to get to the bottom of what happened a little bit in Omaha. I can't tell if I was handed a joke line here or whether this was really true, as Absinthe tweets to us that the buses didn't return to the Omaha airport because the credit cards that the campaign used bounced. I don't know about that. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. All right, let's see. Waiting on further verification, if we can get it from Absinthe. I think he's looking back. She, you know what? I don't know. That's a good question. It said gender neutral. We'll just say this individual person, for whom, really, honestly, for all of us, is gender really important? Can't we just get away from that count? I don't know. I'm not actually up to speed on the thinking and lingo these days on that subject, but it's a good question. Awaiting further verification, I guess. I just had to come back and ask, was that a joke or was that real? Because I can't tell. But the search is on for an existing thread on this issue. Oh, wait a minute. Is this responsive to this particular question? Greg sends me... Oh, no, an entirely new direction, and one that was on tap for discussion, to be sure. Let me get some more things here. What else is happening here? Okay. All other fantastic news and stories, suggestions, but not verification of the question of whether or not the credit cards were denied for the return trip somehow from the Omaha airport. That strikes me as less plausible, I guess, unless the chartering was done on an emergency last-minute basis, which is entirely possible with the Trump campaign, and it wasn't until the first run with the buses had been completed that they found out that the credit card was not, that the charge wasn't going to go through, so they just said, forget the second half of this run. Normally you would say, well, if you pay me, I will do the first run. But who knows with these things? And it certainly sounds like it could be characteristic of the Trump campaign to have blown it on that front and to be short of money. But we'll see whether any further verification comes through. Let's see. I'm going to go over to Pocket, and then, maybe I'll open up these two pieces that Greg has sent on. And we'll see what happens from there. If we can't get to them today, it would make great material for Friday's show. I'm just saying to myself that if I just continued and did another 2 hours of, in this case, fake broadcasting, but then recorded the results and played it for you on Friday, then you'd have a full week's worth of the US RDA of the KITM show. And that's all the initials I can think of to use right now. Oh, except for the COVID-19, which is not, well, it's not strictly speaking initials, but okay. We understand how these things work, even if we can't think of the terminology. I did mention to you that there was word from Europa, although this particular part of Europa has left Europe, as it turns out, in the Brexit break. But anyway, Imperial College back in the game, and of course all the COVID doubters are rolling their eyes at the fact that the news comes from Imperial College. But anyway, long story short, I guess, on that one, rather than reading you the long study that makes the case, we will let ITV digest it for us. COVID-19 immunity could only last a few months after infection, study shows. I think it's long been suspected that's the case, but here's the ITV stories write-up on it. COVID-19 immunity could only last a few months following infection after a study revealed a decline in protective antibodies. Research by Imperial College London estimated just 4.4% of adults had some form of immunity against COVID-19 in September, when cases began to increase again. I really think we might be onto something here. And it might be that this second wave of infections in previously hard-hit Europe has something to do with the fading away of helpful protective antibodies in the bloodstreams of the Europeans subject to it. This is compared with 6% found to have antibodies between June 20th and July 13th, and 4.8% between July 31st and August 31st. So it's on the way down from June, and I don't know if they had any numbers for, say, May and June, when much of Europe was was coming down from the peak of their infections and recovering, but the difference isn't that great in terms of the percentages here, but still 6% in June and early July, down to 4.8% late July through August, and now down to just 4.4% in September. Findings published by Imperial College London and Ipsos Mori, M-O-R-I, another acronym here, suggest that people who did not show symptoms of the virus were likely to lose antibodies sooner than those who did show symptoms. So that's of some interest too. Finding, I guess, that if you're lucky enough to be asymptomatic, even if you're unfortunate enough to contract the virus, your antibodies, to the extent that you produce them at all, are gone from your bloodstream sooner than they are from the bloodstreams of those who exhibit symptoms. Those aged 18 to 24 had the highest prevalence of antibodies and lowest decline in antibody levels at 14.9%. Meanwhile, people aged 75 and over had the lowest prevalence and saw the largest drop, with antibody levels falling by 39%. So, of course, just what you don't want. The most vulnerable and susceptible to the disease and susceptible to death from the disease. I guess that kind of explains why. The body's reaction to the disease is, I guess, at its peak when in younger bodies. Researchers warned, however, that it remains unclear whether antibodies provide any effective level of immunity, or, if such immunity exists, for how long it might last. We know that there's antibodies, and that's supposed to convey immunity. That's the point of having them. But does it work? The antibodies are there, but can it really make you immune? Could it just lessen your symptoms? Second time around, I guess nobody knows yet. Surveying more than 365,000 participants across England, researchers found the number of people with antibodies to coronavirus fell by 26.5% over 3 months. Yeesh. Graham Cook, professor of infectious diseases at Imperial College London, said, the big picture here, although he said it with a British accent, the big picture here is that after the first wave of coronavirus, the great majority of the country still did not have evidence of protective immunity. So, although we are seeing a decline in the proportion of people who are testing positive, we still have a great majority of people who are unlikely to have been exposed. So we're not getting anywhere close to herd immunity. And I keep reminding people of that obliquely by pointing out that even in the most infected states that we've got in terms of number of cases per million in population, we're still only at just over 5% of the population of North Dakota having, officially anyway, been exposed to and having contracted the coronavirus. And if you are looking for 60 to 80% of the population to have contracted the virus in order to achieve what we traditionally understand to be herd immunity, well, then you're talking about an awful lot of sick people and an awful lot of dead people. And hopefully we never get there. It's why we keep reminding you that the herd immunity strategy is insane. It's suicide. It's nihilistic. It's like Pol Pot mass murderer level idiotic. So let's not do that. So, where were we here? So the need for a vaccine, we're told by Graham Cook from Imperial College, is still very large if you want to try and get a large level of protection in the population. It's not the most eloquent statement I've ever heard. Candidates in the study tested themselves at home using a finger prick test between June 20th and September 28th to check if they had antibodies against coronavirus. That sounds like a handy test. We'll never get our hands on that here in America. While the numbers of people testing positive for antibodies declined gradually in the population, regardless of employment type, interesting view of things, the number of healthcare workers testing positive for antibodies didn't change over time. Helen Ward, professor of public health at Imperial College London, said this could indicate ongoing transmission of coronavirus in those settings or repeated exposure. It's a good guess, right? If you're a frontline healthcare worker. Asked about herd immunity, Professor Ward said, even at best, in the first round of the study, 94% of the population remained not likely protected. And now that has declined to over 95%. That's actually an increase, but I see what you mean, of the population who don't have any evidence of antibodies. So I think we are a long, long way from any idea that the population will be protected by other people. She added that immunity in England was waning quite rapidly. And it just makes you want to develop a speech impediment there. Waning quite rapidly. It just the phrase lends itself to that. Okay. In the latest round of the study, between September 15th and 28th, the prevalence of antibodies remained highest in London and in those of Black and Asian ethnicity. The results of all three rounds of antibody testing indicate the first wave of the epidemic occurred over a relatively short period in March and April. While it suggested a steep decline in the proportion of people who reported having COVID symptoms and who tested positive for antibodies from early April, 2 weeks after national lockdown. Health Minister Lord Bethell stressed testing positive for antibodies does not mean you are immune to COVID-19. Mr. President, he did not add at the end of that, because what does he care what Donald Trump has to say about things? However, it used to be the case that the President of the United States was an important figure in the politics and policy making in many countries around the world. Now, just a sad joke. So thanks a lot for that one, Donald Trump. Which, I mean, it's the best possible outcome with a Donald Trump in office. I prefer that the rest of the world ignore what he does and says. But it's a long way down from where the President of the United States used to be in terms of respect and deference around the world. All right, except in American courts where Federalist Society acolytes now sit in judgment of everything. The president gets deference on everything. Update from Absinthe, who sends news by way of the Daily Beast about the buses in Omaha. And, well, let's see. The headline tells part of the story. Will Sommer wrote this up. No, this charter bus company did not sabotage the Trump rally. So I guess that's interesting news. So it's not sabotage, but is it just straight up not getting paid, or is all of that just a rumor? Let's see. The organizers of the March for Trump, which, what do you need a bus for a March for Trump for? Just march, right? But okay. In the complicated world of Omaha, Nebraska, Trump supporters' minds, a March for Trump includes getting a ride to the march. And you know what? They didn't march either. They all gathered at an airport. There's no marching going on at all, I don't think. All right, well, maybe we misunderstand. All right, the organizers of the March for Trump claim a bus line tried to kill their rally by not showing up, but the bus company says it was never paid thousands of dollars. So maybe there's some truth to it after all. So it's not that they were sabotaged, it's that they weren't paid and they said, F you, we're not giving you a ride, because that's how bus companies work. A couple hundred Donald Trump fans, rallied outside Congress on Thursday for the March for Trump. Oh, okay. Outside Congress. So this is a totally different thing, actually. I don't know. Was there indication that was the Omaha buses in what Absinthe was telling us? I thought so. All right. Well, this is a equally interesting article, but it might not necessarily explain Omaha, unless, who knows? Let's keep reading. Maybe it does. A couple hundred Donald Trump fans rallied outside Congress on Thursday for the March for Trump. Thursday is, of course, tomorrow, so we're talking about last Thursday. This is an article published on October 18th. So maybe a totally different story here. Anyway, according to organizers, there would have been hundreds more people shouting, "Stop the coup," in Washington's streets, if not for a liberal plot against their buses, or also the absence of any coup. That's because as would-be rally attendees gathered across the East Coast for the U.S. Coachways buses that organizers had promised would take them to Washington, those buses, not the ones in Omaha, never showed. The no-shows provoked a wave of anger, accusations that the deep state had colluded to stop a show of Trump support in Washington, and negative reviews aimed at U.S. Coachways. But U.S. Coachways had a simpler explanation for what happened. It was never paid for the requested buses due to a series of declined credit card payments. We want to go get people down there, Joseph Heap, U.S. Coachways chief marketing officer, told the Daily Beast, but unfortunately payment is required. For those who made it to the rally, the missing buses were a subject of anger, consternation, and conspiracies. Rally speaker and One America News personality Jack Posobiec compared the bus issue, I'm sure to Hitler, right? Well, compared the bus issue to social media companies deplatforming conservatives. I hear there was a buses issue today, he said. The company refused to work with folks as slaves, I guess. And Women for America First, the organizing group, quickly blasted the bus company in a press release accusing U.S. Coachways of stopping hundreds of Americans from exercising their First Amendment rights for free. Last night, less than 2 hours before our first chartered buses were supposed to leave for D.C., we were informed that the bus company was canceling all of our buses, including ones that were fully paid for, except weren't paid for, is what the statement should have said. But they stopped after the first paid for in their statements because they're liars and partisans. This move left hundreds of grassroots activists stranded and unable to attend the anti-impeachment rally today. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Why am I guess it didn't register with me when I read the date out loud, October 18th, but maybe I didn't read you the year, October 18th, 2019. Now I'm getting the picture here because I didn't hear anything about any march for Trump. Okay, so a little bit of a time machine act here. More discussion of time travel to come. Ironically, tomorrow in the pre-taped show for tomorrow, I discuss, there's some prevalent mention anyway of the possibility of time travel and how it might affect our coverage of the news. How bizarre is that we did in fact travel back in time and do this on Wednesday, even during the Thursday show. The implications are staggering. Meanwhile, the implications of this article, while interesting, are no longer entirely staggering, given that it is over a year old. So it doesn't tell us anything about what happened in Omaha, but it does establish as precedent, I suppose, the fact that some of these organizers are very disorganized and stupid people, and like their hero, love to stiff people who would otherwise be happy to sell them various goods and services. Let's put it that way. Okay. The door remains open if you find a more recent article or one that pertains directly to what happened in Omaha. I still would like to figure that one out. In the meantime, back to Pocket and the Twitter stream, and we'll see what other items we can share with you today. Let's see. How about this one? This seems interesting. And then, of course, we have the two things that Greg recommended for us. And one of them is that one, as a matter of fact. He sent me a tweet from NYC Southpaw, including a link to a Washington Post article, which I had set aside for discussion anyway, so we might as well do that. Southpaw commenting here, Trump is the leader of a stochastic terrorism movement targeting officials in his own government, among other targets. What is this all about? Well, the answer is this Washington Post piece, which will catch none of you unawares. Trump's attacks on political adversaries are often followed by threats to their safety. I'll bet you could never have guessed that. Greg Miller and Isaac Stanley Becker teaming up on this piece from today's Post. The CIA's most endangered employee for much of the past year. Not a spy embedded in Russia or anything like that, but rather not even an operative at all on any mission abroad, but instead an analyst who faced a torrent of threats after filing a whistleblower report that led to the impeachment of President Trump. The analyst spent months living in no-frills hotels under surveillance by CIA security, current and former U.S. officials said. He was driven to work by armed officers in an unmarked sedan. On the few occasions he was allowed to re-enter his home to retrieve belongings, a security team had to sweep the apartment first to make sure it was safe. The measures were imposed by the CIA's Security Protective Service, which monitored thousands of threats across social media and internet chat rooms. Over time, a pattern emerged. Violent messages surged each time the analyst was targeted in tweets or public remarks by the president. The president was tweeting, "Where's the whistleblower? Where's the whistleblower?" said a former senior U.S. official involved in overseeing the protection of the analyst, whose name has not been disclosed by the government. The analyst was never in direct danger, the official said, because they were protecting him at all times, but some threats were so serious that without security, there is a strong possibility that grave harm would have come to him. Is there any other kind? The CIA declined to comment. Over the past year, public servants across the country have faced similar ordeals. The targets encompass nearly every category of government service: mayors, governors, members of Congress, as well as officials Trump has turned against within his own administration. The dynamic appears to be without precedent. Government agencies taking extraordinary measures to protect their people from strains of seething hostility stoked by a sitting president. Remember the guys you can't indict. But then again, we usually don't have to indict them for making terroristic threats. Now we do, and maybe the rules should change. I think so. In recent weeks, the danger has become more alarming and visible. The FBI disrupted an alleged plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Days later, Anthony Fauci, the U.S. immunologist leading the response to the coronavirus pandemic, revealed in an interview on 60 Minutes that he requires near constant security because of threats against him and his family. And I believe we learned that our own governor here in Virginia, Ralph Northam, apparently also the subject of some discussion from the right-wing extremists about kidnapping and killing him, just like Gretchen Whitmer. And I think I saw the other day mentioned that apparently even Mike DeWine, who is a Republican, the governor of Ohio, but I guess not performing to Trumpian standards, was perhaps similarly targeted. I'll see if I can make a note to myself about finding the information on DeWine. I think we've already seen the info on Northam. I will use my only sometimes trusty fountain pen, which is the only pen within easy reach to try and scratch that out. We'll have to work on replacing the ink cartridge in that thing. Okay. Fauci commenting on the threats to him and his safety and his family's safety. It's sad that a public health message to save lives triggers such venom and animosity that it results in real incredible threats to my life and my safety. A White House spokeswoman disputed that Trump had encouraged such threats with his verbal attacks on Fauci, Whitmer, and others. President Trump has never advocated for violence against those he disagrees with, unlike Democrats, said lying a-hole Sarah Matthews, listed here as spokeswoman. But I've read it a little differently. She cited an instance in 2018 when Representative Maxine Waters urged supporters to respond to the administration's policy of separating migrant children from their families by confronting Trump officials in public. You push back on them, Waters said, and you tell them they're not welcome anymore anywhere, which is not actually violent at all, versus somebody punched that guy in the face, which is a thing that Trump has actually said. The rise in such cases is part of a broader escalation in tension and violence across the United States, with clashes in major cities, shootings that have killed or wounded protesters and law enforcement officials, and dark murmurings of possible uprisings depending on the outcome of next week's election. The degree to which Trump is responsible for the spate of threats against public officials is difficult to determine. It's a effing lot. See, that was really actually easier than I thought. Politicians, including presidents, have always faced the worry of violence by angry constituents. That's true. The internet and the country's increasingly partisan climate are often cited as factors in the spread of threats and hateful rhetoric against officials across the political spectrum. But, of course, things have taken on a sharper focus, shall we say, these days. But more than any predecessor, Trump has fomented mob-like anger at perceived adversaries throughout his presidency. Though his exhortations, generally stop short of explicitly promoting violence, except for the punch that guy in the face, and let's have a Second Amendment solution, etc. His words have been echoed in hundreds of menacing online messages, and he has consistently resisted entreaties to disavow or discourage violence. Elizabeth Newman, who also makes an appearance in tomorrow's show, because time travel, a Trump appointee who left her post in April as the Department of Homeland Security's Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism and Threat Prevention, it's a long title, said the president continues to use inflammatory rhetoric despite warnings about dangerous repercussions. A healthy leader, mentally, when confronted with such facts, would say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea, and that was not my intent. Let me clear the air and make it clear I do not support these causes," Newman said in an interview. He does the opposite. He doubles down. He cannot admit that his language is having a horrible effect because he knows it's motivating to his supporters. In the most striking recent case, Trump lashed out at Whitmer and her pandemic policies at an October 17th campaign rally just days after the plot against her was exposed. As the president's supporters broke out in "lock her up" chants, he responded approvingly. "Lock them all up," he said, including you. Within hours, new ripples of hostility on social media reached Whitmer and her subordinates. I am the governor's deputy digital director, Tori Saylor, said in a plaintive posting on Twitter. I see everything that is said about her and to her online. And what did some of it include? Every single time the president does this at a rally, the violent rhetoric towards her immediately escalates on social media. It has to stop. It just has to. 9 days earlier, unsealed FBI documents revealed that a group of men had spent months planning to abduct the governor in retaliation for restrictions she had imposed on state residents to slow the spread of coronavirus. So there she is, trying to save our lives again. The least we could do is return the favor by murdering her. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Edwards Radio. We may have got sort of cut off at the lead into the break, but you got the idea of what's going on here. Let's continue on with this Washington Post article, and then we'll fill you in on what we were able to find out about the buses in Omaha. Anyway, let's see. The FBI picked up on online discussions. We're talking about the possible Whitmer abduction. Picked up on online discussions about the scheme soon after those restrictions were implemented, according to an October 6th criminal complaint. But the plotting appears to have accelerated after Trump began publicly taunting Whitmer and tweeted, "Liberate Michigan," in mid-April. And he did it again, of course, after the story broke, too. So, unrepentant, in case you were wondering. The FBI complaint does not name Trump or indicate that he inspired the conspiracy, but he did. An FBI agent who testified in the case said he was unaware whether Trump's tweets were discussed among the alleged plotters, but they were. But there are other indications that those arrested were reacting to Trump's rhetoric. The president had issued a similar call to, quote, liberate Virginia, whose governor, Ralph Northam, was also considered a possible target by the alleged plotters. Whitmer said when the arrests were announced that she saw Trump as complicit because of how he has encouraged hate groups. When our leaders speak, their words matter, she said. They carry weight. Trump's carry considerably more weight than they should, if you know what I mean. Self-identified members of extremist groups often repeat Trump's rhetoric down to the same pieces of wording in online channels, said Kevin Grisham, Associate Director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University at San Bernardino. Criticism and conspiracy theories aimed at Trump by Fauci, or rather, the actual opposite of what I just said. I reversed those two, conjunctions, articles, what am I looking at here? Criticism and conspiracy theories aimed by Trump at Fauci, though I would be welcoming of criticism and conspiracy theories by Fauci at Trump, I must say. But also aimed by Trump not only at Fauci, but also George Soros and other frequent targets, course through messaging apps, including Telegram, as well as Parler, a relatively new platform that members of Trump's campaign have promoted as unfettered by the constraints increasingly imposed by Facebook and other mainstream services. Ineffectually enough as it is, but okay. Whether the president really intends to incite violence, Grisham said, the evidence points to a strong correlation. The volatility in the country's political life has put enormous pressure on federal, state, and local government entities responsible for official security, The FBI and the U.S. Capitol Police, which is responsible for protecting members of Congress, are now routinely engaged in investigations of threats against public officials attacked publicly by the president, according to U.S. officials. And just to shift your focus for just a minute back to something I've covered before and we'll have to cover again soon, the U.S. Capitol Police, as we mentioned here, responsible for protecting members of Congress, now routinely engaged in an investigation of threats against public officials publicly attacked by the president, are soon going to have to shift their focus to protection of members of Congress who will be routinely engaged in making threats against other members of Congress. Once our QAnon nutters from Georgia and perhaps elsewhere land in Congress and get handed the member's pin and along with it the right to enter the House chamber without going through any sort of security checks, we'll be having daily visits from somebody who purports to believe fully that nearly all of her new colleagues in the House are pedophiles, murderers, and vampires. And we'll just have to see how strongly she believes in that. It'll be very interesting because she'll have a large constituency back home who will begin to clamor for some real action. How can you go to work among those pedophiles, kidnappers, murderers, and vampires every day and not do something for America? And eventually that'll turn into an insistence that she carry weapons with her onto the House floor and strike a blow for freedom against the many vampires, murderers, and pedophiles among whom she works each day. That'll become a new challenge for the Capitol Police. We'll see how they handle it. Representative Adam Schiff of California, who presented the impeachment case against Trump in the Senate, faced so many threats during that trial that he required round-the-clock security, officials said. The attacks from Trump have yet to stop. When Trump suggests darkly that something should happen to his political opponents, and that's a quote apparently, as he did to me last week at a rally, this is Schiff describing it, or calls someone a traitor or urges that they be locked up, it goes beyond political rhetoric and borders on incitement, Schiff said in a written statement to the Washington Post. The truth is, Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing with these statements and that some of his supporters will take him seriously and literally. We must not ignore the danger he's creating. Those who testified at impeachment hearings faced an almost immediate avalanche of online attacks, among them Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, mentioned again tomorrow because time travel, a decorated Army officer who worked at the White House. At one point, Vindman was urged by Army officials to move his family to a military base for better security, Vindman said in an interview. I don't know whether that's worse or not. Anyway, he opted against doing so only after other measures were adopted, including regular police patrols past his house. Lawmakers from both parties have endured increased threats to their safety. In 2017, we got to both sides this somehow, a left-wing activist from Illinois opened fire on Republican House members at a softball practice, actually baseball, but that's really not a nit we have to spend time picking, gravely injuring House Majority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana, who went on, of course, to turn things around, use the moment to pivot and become a better person and stop leveling dangerous and stochastic terroristic attacks against others. No, he didn't. Anyway. But only Democrats have faced cycles of threats that surge and subside in sync with the president's rhetoric. There's that correlation. Among the most frequent targets is Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of 4 female minority members Trump declared should, quote, go back to their countries last year, even though all 4 are U.S. citizens, of course, because they're representatives in the House of Representatives in Congress, and 3, including Ocasio-Cortez, were born in this country. Trump's attack on Ocasio-Cortez, the attacks, plural, are part of a broader campaign of criticism fueled by right-wing media. Lauren Hitt, communications director for Ocasio-Cortez, said that the Congresswoman's office routinely fields between 2 and 8 serious threats each week, meaning communications that mention violence. These are only the most worrisome messages among dozens more that come in each week that are deemed merely harassing because they don't mention physical harm to the Congresswoman. We had one harassing caller last week leave 40 voicemails overnight, it said. The threatening calls create burdens for staff and law enforcement agencies. Because of a long-standing House rules, security resources are distributed largely based on seniority, maybe something to change, meaning new arrivals to Capitol Hill have less to spend on protection even when they face more threats than higher-ranking counterparts. Ocasio-Cortez has had to make very expensive upgrades to our district office to ensure security, it said. That money, she said, is coming out of a very limited freshman budget that might otherwise be used to serve constituents. Officials at the FBI and the U.S. Capitol Police declined to discuss security issues in detail, citing concern with disclosing measures they use to ensure officials' safety. Only a small percentage of threats lead to arrests, and there's little, if any, available data on how often investigations connect threats to the words of the president. Asked whether the number of threats to Ocasio-Cortez has risen after attacks by Trump or his surrogates in politics or in right-wing media, Hitt said, "We have seen spikes in all of those scenarios." Even mayors of cities far from Washington have experienced similar threats, as Portland, Oregon Mayor Ted Wheeler became the target of hostile Trump tweets this summer. His office received a series of unnerving messages. One from a sender using an email address identifying himself as a Trump supporter said, "You guys should be dragged out of your offices and hung by your necks and left there till dead," which is the usual aim of hanging people by their necks, so not surprising in that respect. In early September, after Trump launched 15 tweets in a single day assailing Wheeler, more messages arrived. "I was hoping someone would crack your skull open," one said, according to communications reviewed by the Post. "I hope someone assassinates Mayor Wheeler," said another. That's pretty upfront. Wheeler also came under attack from the left. Don't forget that. Both sides. In September, he moved out of his condo after protesters broke windows and hurled burning items into the building. Why do we think it's the left? Because that's the prevailing narrative. But I do have some stories in pocket, which I might want to share with you, that indicate that you shouldn't jump to that conclusion too soon. U.S. officials said threats against the CIA whistleblower soared not only when Trump lashed out against him on Twitter, but when the president's allies sought to expose the analyst's identity to the public. The analyst's name and details about his position have been withheld under laws designed to protect whistleblowers, but right-wing news organizations have repeatedly speculated about his identity. Threats against the whistleblower subsided after Trump's Senate acquittal, officials said, and although some security measures have been scaled back, officials said that the analyst continues to be a target of online attacks and that some protective measures are likely to remain in place indefinitely. Wow. Well, it's quite a story. Let's see. I might have otherwise followed up with this piece from that's tweeted around anyway by Glenn Kessler that Greg provided to me, but perhaps we could use this previous story to segue onto another that I mentioned. But before I do, I'll give you a brief update on the Omaha buses. I just searched it on Twitter to see what people were talking about. Most of it is unverified stuff, but at least we know that Absinthe was right. People were talking about it. I have a tweet here from one Georgia Dawes, who says, from the Trump rally in Omaha on Tuesday evening, elderly people freezing, hypothermic, unable to get back to their cars, chaotic, disorganized. Buses say credit card to cover rides back from airport were declined. Horrible situation. Interesting. Other tweets of the same nature, again, pretty much unverified here, but somebody responding to a tweeter by the name of Jonathan Sundet, who says that he was at the rally. He says he drove 4 hours to see President Trump speak, and that's your problem. right there. But he says it was disappointing how their shuttle system was not there when we had to leave. We walked 3 miles to get back to our car, and it's very disheartening to hear about those who were badly affected. An explanation would be nice. Judith Sanders provides that explanation by way of saying the bus company says the credit card payments for the buses didn't go through. Wow. So pretty amazing. And then, of course, somebody else responding to him saying, Trump left you in the freezing cold during a global pandemic because his campaign credit card was declined. The transportation company feared they wouldn't get paid. It is Trump's practice to stiff companies, so they didn't send the buses. That's God's idea of a metaphor. Pretty amazing. Yeah, and then somebody else asking the question, and it's a decent one. How did these people get to the rally in the first place if the buses didn't get paid? And I guess they found out in the middle of the thing that they weren't getting paid, and they did what I think just about anybody would do. Although you might find people just saying, well, we can't leave people out there in the cold. I don't know. This time the driver said, I know exactly who we left out there. We can leave them out there in the cold, and maybe we should. Interesting. Okay, also comments coming in here from others. Let's see, Asparagus Zucchini chiming in. Logistics is not Trump's thing. Couldn't handle the 6,000 people who attended, but they claim there were 29,000. That could be a problem too, right? You know, we just didn't order enough buses because after all, there's 29,000 of you, but there really aren't. And Mike Musson commenting on the herd immunity situation and the antibodies we were discussing having been reported from the Imperial College study, saying maybe Greg can clarify, but I keep seeing articles that conflate antibodies with immunity, but that isn't accurate. The antibodies normally decline after an infection is stopped. The formation of memory T and B cells is what confers long-term immunity. That sounds like it makes a certain amount of sense, and we'll see whether that gets clarified at any point in the near future. It won't happen in the next 20 minutes, I don't think. So we can shift our focus elsewhere. Let's see. A very good argument being made here in this piece referenced by Glenn Kessler, but perhaps we'll save it for now. I think that, oh yes, right, one of the things that was hinted at in the Washington Post piece on Trump's threats against political adversaries made me think, yes, it was when the mayor of Portland, Mayor Wheeler, I guess, had the windows on his condo broken, and they attributed that to dissatisfaction with him among the left, whatever that might mean. And I had heard at the time that there were, I guess, what you might legitimately identify as leftist activists who were unhappy with his response to their protests. So yes, there was some discontent being expressed, but I guess if you wanted to call into question the idea that it was, or that it's known at all who broke his windows, I guess you might do that on the basis of this article from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that has been sitting in pocket waiting for its day to come around. An October 24th article, Texas members of the Boogaloo Boys are, charged with opening fire on the Minneapolis police precinct during protests over George Floyd. The feds, the subheader says, say Texas adherent of far-right group fired on precinct building, conspired with cop killer to ignite civil war. So, maybe something else happened here. Andy Mannix, M-A-N-N-I-X, writing for the Star Tribune on the 24th here. The illustrated with a photo of the Minneapolis 3rd Police Precinct in flames during the protests following the death of George Floyd. In the wake of protests following the May 25th killing of George Floyd, a member of the Boogaloo Boys opened fire on the Minneapolis Police 3rd Precinct with an AK-47 style gun and screamed, "Justice for Floyd," as he ran away, according to a federal complaint made public on Friday. Not this Friday, because today is Wednesday, but last Friday. A sworn affidavit by the FBI underlying the complaint reveals new details about a far-right anti-government group's coordinated role in the violence that roiled through civil unrest over Floyd's death while in police custody. Ivan Harrison Hunter, a 26-year-old from Boerne, Texas, B-O-E-R-N-E, Boerne perhaps, is charged with one count of interstate travel to incite a riot for his alleged role in ramping up violence during the protests in Minneapolis on May 27th and 28th. Now, obviously, I think you all get the connection, but just in case it isn't explicitly made, for weeks, months even, the right wing has pointed to the fire at the police precinct and the gunfire at the police precinct as indications that the rabid radical left is out of control and needs to be cracked down on, and federal troops need to be sent, unidentified and unidentifiable. Federal troops need to be dispatched and snatch people off the streets and crack heads and crack down in general on these crazy leftists that are doing all these things. And actually, probably to the surprise of virtually no one listening to the show, it turns out that in fact these are the activities of agents provocateurs, perhaps, is how they would say it, but who are from among, perhaps, the hardcore right. Now, it has been pointed out by people who actually, I think, do know what they're talking about these things, that among the greater umbrella under which people operate as the Boogaloo Boys, there are, in fact, people who at least would work very hard to leave you with the impression that they are, yes, in favor of inciting civil war in the country, but that they consider themselves like nihilist leftist in their approach to encouraging civil war, and that there are likewise hard right Boogaloo Boys as well. I am not certain that that is entirely accurate, but it has been asserted to be the case. But here, I think the implication clearly is that a right-wing Boogaloo Boy type operative went with the intention not only of raising tensions and inciting violence, but in blaming the left for that rise in tensions and violence. So more about Ivan Harrison Hunter here. Let's see. According to charges, Hunter, wearing a skull mask, everyone familiar with those, and tactical gear, because he's so cool, shot 13 rounds at the South Minneapolis police headquarters while people were inside. He also looted and helped set the building ablaze, according to the complaint, which was filed Monday under seal. Again, that last Monday, a week from 2 days ago. Unrest flared throughout Minneapolis following Floyd's death, which was captured on a bystander's cell phone video, causing Governor Tim Walz to activate the Minnesota National Guard. As police clashed with protesters, Hunter and other members of the Boogaloo Boys discussed in private Facebook messages, not all that private, I guess, their plans to travel to Minneapolis and rally at the Cub Foods near the 3rd Precinct building, according to federal court documents. One of the people Hunter coordinated with posted publicly to social media, "Lock and load, boys. Boog flags are in the air and the national network is going off," the complaint states. Ooh, that's such tactical talk. 2 hours after the police precinct was set on fire, Hunter texted with another Boogaloo member in California, a man named Stephen Carrillo. "Go for police buildings," Hunter told Carrillo, according to charging documents. The surname comes up quite a bit. And did his name come up tomorrow as well? I can't recall the context there. All right. Anyway, go for police buildings, Hunter told Carrillo, according to charging documents. "I did better, LOL," Carrillo replied. A few hours earlier, Carrillo had killed a Federal Protective Services officer in Oakland, California. LOL. According to criminal charges filed against him in California. On June 1st, Hunter asked Carrillo for money explaining he needed to be in the woods for a bit, where they don't take money. And Carrillo sent him $200 via a cash app. 5 days later, Carrillo shot and killed a sheriff's deputy in Santa Cruz when authorities tried to arrest him, according to charges filed in California. Why didn't he just obey their orders? Oh well. Authorities say that he stole the car and wrote Boog on the hood in what appeared to be his own blood. He's a super stable guy. Just a patriot, you know? A couple of days later, during police protests in Austin, Texas, police pulled over a truck after seeing 3 men in tactical gear and carrying guns drive away from it. Hunter, in the front passenger seat, wore 6 loaded banana magazines for an AK-47 style assault rifle on his tactical vest, according to federal authorities. The 2 other men had AR-15 magazines affixed to their vests. The officers found an AK-47 style rifle and 2 AR-15 rifles in the rear seat of the vehicle, a pistol next to the driver's seat, and another pistol in the center console. That one left there for a 3-year-old to find it later, I'm sure. But this does remind me, by the way, in a possibly related story, I did see mentioned on Twitter, I'll have to find the reference for you, that a federal judge in Michigan has okayed the plans, by some anyway, to open carry their weapons to the polls on Election Day, next Tuesday, because, you know, they just have that right. Not that they have any particular plans for those guns once they get there. They just have rights, and it's going to be okay. So let's just keep that in mind when things go wrong and find that judge and, you know, maybe set him straight in a legal sort of way. Hunter denied he owned any of the weapons that were found in the vehicle. They just fell out of the sky, I guess. He did, according to the complaint, volunteer that he was the leader of the Boogaloo Boys in South Texas. Everyone says they're that. And that he was present in Minneapolis when the 3rd Precinct was set on fire. Police seized the guns and let Hunter and the others go because, you know, they're white and that's what you do with white people. Hunter had bragged about his role in the Minneapolis riots on Facebook, publicly proclaiming, "I helped the community burn down that police station. And I didn't," and that's sick there. He said DIDN apostrophe T apostrophe. The extra apostrophe is the sick mistake there. "I didn't protest peacefully, dude. Want something to change? Start risking felonies for what is good." The BLM protesters in Minneapolis loved me. I think he meant there, my fire team and I. Ooh, more tactical talk. He wrote on June 11th. According to the complaint, fire team is a reference to a group he started with Carrillo that responds with violence if the police try to take their guns away. Hunter also referred to himself as a terrorist, the complaint states. So that case really ought to wrap up pretty neatly, if you ask me. A confidential informant told police that Hunter planned to, quote, go down shooting if authorities closed in, except he didn't. He ran away. They arrested him without incident in San Antonio, Texas last week, and he made his first court appearance on Thursday. Hunter is the 3rd member of the Boogaloo Boys, a loose-knit group intent on igniting a second American Civil War, to be charged in Minneapolis as a result of the unrest that followed Floyd's death. Michael Robert Solomon and Benjamin Ryan Teeter were indicted in September with conspiracy to provide material support to Hamas. Remember this one? A designated foreign terrorist organization. What a fine group of patriots. They're so patriotic, and you can tell they're patriots because of their collaboration with Hamas. Just as all fine patriots really ought to be doing with their time. Wow. So anyway, the point is that the American right has been dining out for weeks and months on the quote-unquote fact that it's the left that's responsible for the violence racking all these cities. And it kind of turns out that it's exactly the opposite. And that, in fact, is the right doing it not only of their own volition, but with the idea in mind that it would be mistakenly blamed on the left, and they would all laugh about it while shooting cops because After all, everyone knows that the lefts are the ones who are against cops because they want to defund them, whatever that might mean, whereas we want to murder them. That's pro-police and patriotic, whereas defunding them is awful and terroristic. P.S. I am a terrorist. That's what the guy said. I don't know why this is going to... I hope this doesn't take too long to bring justice down upon them heavily, hard, and that we get to see it done soon. Not that it's going to affect the election outcome any, because we won't learn about all of that until it's too late to base our decision-making on that stuff anyway. Okay, time for us to hand over the microphone to the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, where Justice Putnam will pick up for the rest of the day. I'll remind you, no live show on Thursday, and in all likelihood, nothing for Friday either, but we do have fresh material to share with you tomorrow. I feel the urge coming on to share some fresh material with you for Friday as well. In the meantime, the stuff is even fresher coming up next with Justice Putnam. Stay tuned.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Here's some interesting stuff. Jim Comey's wife tried to stop his October surprise. Is that an interesting story to you? On the rest of the menu, with an anemic 37.4% support among active military, it's no wonder Trump doesn't want armed services ballots overseas counted. What a twist.